holding. Thank you, Zoom lady. So the first one is Andreas, that is not here. I don't think he's here. So the meeting is going to change to Wednesday at 3:30 UTC starting next month, and it is already reflected on the team meetings calendar. I made a small note about this one conflicting with the delivery office hours, but I don't think it is like a big deal. It only conflicts every other week. And I'm not sure what do you think about having also a call on the APAC time zone.
Is there someone who could facilitate it?
Well, I was thinking about Tiger and Grass. I'm not sure if they would be up to the task, but perhaps it is a good idea, like, to approach more people because we have a good number of engineers in those time zones. So yeah, perhaps I'm just going to open an issue and ping Tiger and Crasio there.
Yeah, good idea.
Okay, moving forward. I don't know if you saw the Andreas announcement about changing from database schema to a structured SQL. So moving forward, we are going to use the new file under DB, and you can read all about it on the issue. And if you have like any question or feedback, and it is also important to highlight that we need to be mindful about the Postgres features that we can add. And because I think this allows us to add more Postgres features like constraints and materialized views and all other goodies. And there are some follow-ups about reducing potential conflicts potential and handling the conflict-free schema version handling. Thank you, Alper, for that. Do you have any comment about this?
I think Pandora's box is open, so Postgres specific features.
Yay, I am particularly excited about this one also. I mean, we can start using materialized views, which it is nice, and we no longer support MySQL, so awesome. I'm not sure when we are moving to the new version of Postgres, perhaps. I think there is an epic about it, right, Patrick?
Yeah, right now it's scheduled for sometime in April, I think. I'm not sure what, when exactly, but it should be soon.
Cool. So Adam, you're next.
Yeah. So this was coming up in the recent weeks that basically we are not able to add not null constraints to large tables simply because it's not safe. It blocks the table for a long time, and we just don't want deployment problems. And there is an idea to use something called check constraints, and this is something you can roll out in a way that doesn't lock the table for a really long time. And yeah, the question is that if we can start using it since we have the structured SQL file. And Andreas mentioned that, yeah, this is something we could start using, but it's not just for enforcing not nulls, but you can actually have additional checks like, hey, this is an integer field, this should be larger than 0. So probably we should wrap it with a nice migration helper method and document it and start using it. Yeah, pretty much that's it. That's what I'm getting from Andreas' response.
Yeah, I also agree we could start using it, and I think right now is from the delivery and deployment side, I think it is a good time because we are basically starting a new release. So if we ship something, it is going to be deployed next week, and if something fails for some reason, we can just track it earlier rather than merging it on the last days on the release, and then everything explodes. Okay, so moving forward, I was thinking if the other day, because I also noticed that most of our trainees and reviewers have the non-capacity icon. So I wonder right now that we have 5 maintainers, and I think we have 4 trainees and 2 reviewers, if that is enough. I'm not sure if reviewers right now are feeling overwhelmed by having many merge requests assigned. I know that from my side, I always assign merge requests to either Steve or Albert, and I'm sorry about that, but I'm not sure what is your perspective from this.
Like, let's vote, like, do maintainers feel at capacity, mostly overwhelmed, and also reviewers? I marked for myself red circle, but it's not due to database work, it's due to my own teamwork for 1 week. So I'm overloaded, but not because of database reviews. Anyone else is overloaded, reviewers or maintainers?
I get overloaded in waves, it seems. So it's like every week or two, I'll just have, I'll wake up to 10 reviews in my to-do list. And that it's kind of just like, it just kind of hits in waves. So I mean, I think it would be good to have more reviewers, maybe not even necessarily trainees. But yeah, it hasn't really caused any major problems for me at all yet, at least.
Steve, like every week I'm having, let's say, if I have 2 backend reviews, I'm having like 8, 9 database reviews. Is it the same?
Yeah, I'll get maybe 1 or 2 backend reviews a week.
So, hi all, I'm new. I'm Yanis, I'm new to the database team. So hopefully in 1 week or 2 weeks from now, we'll be able to help a lot more with the reviews. I'm starting today with my first review. So yeah, hopefully I will be able to help a lot more in 1 or 2 weeks from now.
Okay, you are reviewing my MR, thanks.
Yeah, and still learning. So still reading while reviewing.
Thanks.
Welcome, Janice. So do you think we should still have the distinction between reviewers and trainees? Like, does every reviewer want to be a trainee and then wants to be a maintainer, or should we still have like 2 classifications? From the reviewer roulette perspective, a trainee gets picked more often than a reviewer. So if you're only a reviewer, you're not going to review a lot of merge requests. I'm not sure how do you feel about it?
Can I say my experience from being a newcomer? At least for me, that rule gives me some space to go slow in the beginning and then switch to a trainee. And I assume that will be true for other people that will join the database group. So, so hopefully, I think that that's a nice rule. It helps people get in, have a few reviews, and then decide if they want to switch to trainee and have more reviews.
And that's exactly what I did. I didn't turn on to a trainee until, I don't know, a couple months ago. But I do think it might be good if there are people that are kind of interested in being involved in database reviews, just to kind of up their knowledge, but maybe they don't have an intention of, being involved to the point of being a trainee. Maybe we can get some more backend developers that just are interested, in a smaller sense.
Yeah, Myra, I think we might need like up to 5 more reviewers also.
Yeah, I do agree. I do wonder how can we like help with this, or what will be the way to attract more people, because I still get the sense that database reviews are kind of daunting. And yes, they are not easy, but they are also like, you need to get experience with them. And yeah, I'm not sure how can attract more people to join us in the database review. Do people know that we have trainees in the database group?
Hey, so those are maintainer trainees, right? Like training to become a maintainer, not a reviewer per se, like a sort. So I'm thinking from a backend perspective, I would like go to review, but not at the maintainer level, so to say. So I'm not sure if that should be a step in becoming a database reviewer for the backend engineers, if that makes sense at all. So like sort of an entry point into doing database reviews for the backend engineers. I mean, pretty much every backend engineer is doing some database work, creating tables or adding fields or stuff like that. So I'm not sure that like having reviews only, like database reviews only to database team will scale good enough. Maybe we can include the backend engineers to do the first kind of review on the database changes.
So maybe I can share some thoughts with you, because I had a discussion with Jerome about an interest on becoming also maybe reviewer in database, and I still feel that I have a lot to learn before doing that. I don't have enough experience around this area, so how I see it for me in this moment is that I need a bit more time to learn, because indeed as a backend engineer I do touch a lot of parts, and especially now with optimizations that we do in usage ping and so. But as I was saying, I feel I need more experience around this, and I remember that we have a training on Postgres in April or something like that. And I would like to go on over that training and learn more and see how things are going for me after that. So this is what I have in mind. If you have suggestions on what can help me here, I'm open to any suggestions from you.
So my suggestion is let's, like everyone here is working with a lot of backend. Let's propose some names here. Like I know if Alexander is Alexander Kreuter, then I know he could be a good reviewer. Alina could be then, like she said later. So let's make some invitations if you wish, because we are working with a lot of, backend engineers, and we know that some could make good reviews actually. Or like any candidates? I have two: Alina, Alexandru Kreuter. If I don't see your last name,
That's good enough. Yep, that's my last name.
Okay, so you were the mentions migration, right?
Yeah,
Okay then.
The ones that timed out. Anyway, I'm thinking like to kind of try and, I'm not sure how we can do that, but I'm thinking if we can try to open up it wider for like let backend engineers sign up for doing database review in some sort of survey. I don't know. So that definitely will like everyone will get some pings on database reviews, and then from there I think we will see someone's like just rejecting and not wanting to continue and so on. Like another option is to have 3 layers of reviews on the database. Why I'm thinking that is that it will not add extra work for current reviewers or maintainers, but it will help backend engineers to review database stuff and kind of get into that experience and rhythm. Again, I don't know. That's another option, sort of.
And I would say if you have any interest in doing reviews, it doesn't hurt to just start doing them. I think when I first chatted with Andreas, and I think even with Myra, I was a little hesitant at first because of my inexperience, but you know, they let me know that if there was any time I was assigned a review and just wasn't sure, it's totally okay to just ask for help or seek out another reviewer to kind of go along through it with. So I wouldn't feel too intimidated with starting with reviews at any time, because we have, you know, all of our reviewers and trainees and maintainers to help everyone.
Okay, so how do I enable myself to do database reviews? Do I just edit my profile page? The Teams
Team YAML, yeah.
Okay.
So, do we have anyone like Ben Prescott? I don't know. I never worked with you on the MRs, but
no, I'm here as support counterpart. I appreciate your confidence in me, but I can't even spell Ruby, let alone.
okay. We have Yannis, then future Alexandro. I think can do it. Alina will soon be able to. So Patrick is finally taking a lot of load.
By the way, I didn't look into the review roulette. Is there any way to let like review roulette to not pick you up for some reviews, like for a period of time? Like I see, as you said, I see a lot of people having that red dot. It will be nice to have something like that to just let roulette skip you for a while. Like currently, I'm really overloaded with Jira, my Jira importer stuff. So I do have a lot of MRs. I think I have 5 or 6 or something like that currently working on. So that will not be a great time for me to get more load on reviews or stuff like that.
Yeah, I think we only have the red dot, or if you put yourself as out of the office, the roulette is going to skip you. But I don't think we have any other way. I know a lot of people do that, like putting themselves out of the office, even if they are not, just to be skipped by the roulette.
Hey, big question. Do you think the share of, not the number, but the share of MRs with a database review is increasing, maybe? Like, do we have any statistics like that? Like people opting out for more database-based solutions, maybe?
I think they are increasing for 2 reasons. Well, the main one is that we are constantly hiring more and more backend engineers, so more and more reviews are like appearing. And I think also we recently enabled to do database reviews for finders. So I have seen some MRs without migrations and without actually some like queries, but just for the finders. So I have seen the number of merge requests from database increasing lately.
Do we have any Periscope data or something like that? Do we gather anything?
We don't. I think that is a good idea.
Yeah, we can ask the data team to like prepare a data MR count and percentage compared to the total every month.
If we see the evolution, like you can kind of predict how many reviewers or maintainers you would need in X months or so.
And maybe for the review roulette, or if we could add an option to mark yourself as busy and to not get picked. I think that should be doable. I think, no?
Yeah, I think it is a good idea. There might be an issue about it already, perhaps. Well, thank you everyone for your ideas and for proposing yourselves as database reviewers. I am sure you won't regret this.
Sorry, you will or you won't?
It is up to you, but yeah, you won't. Okay, so it is moving on. The next topic is kind of related. From the maintainer ratios for backend and frontend, we aim to have a ratio of backend engineers to maintainers or frontend engineers to maintainers around or below, mostly below 6. And right now, for database, it is different. We have 33 engineers per maintainer. I'm not sure if we should aim to have the same number for the same number as backend and frontend, or do you think it should be higher, or what do you think?
I think this metric is broken. Like we should have really maintainer or review counts per MR per month, something like that, with a database label. I mean, this comparison between backend, frontend, and database isn't that great compared to like, we have 100 database labeled MRs every month, and we have 6 maintainers, something like that. That would make more meaning.
But then the MRs also fluctuate a lot more month over month, right? So you'll have a lot more dispersion in that data versus how many people, like how many backend engineers you have.
Yeah, MR per maintainer, for example, merged, database labeled.
Yeah, right. What I'm saying is that depends a lot on what code is being worked on. So month over month, you can have very different numbers of database labeled MRs. So like, I understand where you're coming from, but then like there's, to me, I think that might not give, again, as accurate data as we want to. I don't know, just as a side note on that.
Yeah, I think that also can conflict with the fact that some maintainers are like out of the office in some time. So we cannot measure or track exactly merge requests per maintainer per month. So that might be the reason why we are choosing a number of engineers per maintainer. So I'm not sure if the ratio we have right now, well, it is not great, but it is better than 5 months ago. And I wonder what should be like the goal here.
Yeah, I think to get the kind of gold node, we'll need to have both numbers to know how many MRs do require database review and how many people like we do have. So kind of having those 2 numbers will help to understand how much more work will be coming or something like that. So if I know that like it seems from some recent discussions, we do slow down on hiring. So that's one point that we can take off to knowing like how many backend engineers we will be having in next months, and then having some numbers on like some kind of historical. I don't know if we can pull some historical data on how many database labeled MRs we used to have, how many we do have now, to kind of get a trajectory there. And given how many people will be hired, we can kind of predict, well, this is where we would want to be with the maintainers in next few months, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make.
I was gonna say, from the subjective standpoint, I mean, how busy are the maintainers right now? Because that's just an easy measure of, do you feel like you're getting, do you think the maintainers are currently getting overwhelmed by reviews at the moment?
I know my MRs and mentions did take quite some time. So
Well, for me, at the moment I am not overwhelmed, but there is like a week, because this is like the first week of the new release, so basically everything is crickets right now. But for the last week, that was the last week of the past release, yeah, I was quite busy. I'm not sure how are you feeling, Adam?
Not too bad. So there are some days when lots of reviews are coming in, but generally it's still manageable. So not too bad.
If you wish, let's discuss this, Myra, again 2 weeks later with new, data.
Yeah, sure. I think we can have. I think it is a good idea about getting the merge requests opened per month. Perhaps he could give us some more thoughts about it. Any other comment about this one? Okay. So the next one is from Kras, who is not in the call, and he is saying that the new helper that was added, I think, some months or 2 months ago, it cannot be used with disabled transactions, but we have a couple of merge requests that they are using this. They are disabled the transactions and they are using the helper. And I can see, Adam, you are already suggesting some things. Do you want to verbalize this?
Yes. So I think, first of all, we need a Rubocop rule for it. Why we cannot disable transactions simply is because this helper method, you can execute any kinds of database statements within this block, and this block, the underlying implementation, creates a transaction. And when you run something that is generally complex, let's say when you rename a column or add a column with a default value, that will be broken down to several steps. First, we are adding the column, then we pre-fill the existing data, and then we change, maybe the not null constraint. It depends how you pass the parameters. And when this whole thing runs in a transaction, each step might require different kinds of database lock. And the problem is the lock will be kept for the whole duration of the transaction. So if you start adding a column, that requires an exclusive lock on the table, which means while this lock is active, nobody can insert anything into the database. And then you kick off, backfilling some data, which takes, let's say, half minute, everything will be blocked for half minute. So this is why we cannot disable transactions. And that's why we cannot use some of our migration helper methods with lock retries helper method. How we move forward, of course, we need a COP for this to prevent disabling the DDR transaction. Plus, as we are using this helper method more and more, we're actually gathering some stats, how it performs, how many retry steps we are doing. There's a link on the bottom. As a long-term solution, we will bake this helper method in our migration helper method. So we will wrap specific parts of our migration methods with lock retries. For example, when you add the column for the first time, we don't add it for the data migration. We will add it when you define a foreign key. So that's the plan. And so far, looking at the numbers, I see a few cases when this helper method actually helped us preventing. I wouldn't say it's 100% sure, but definitely it might prevented failed deployments. And so far it's working. So I didn't see any performance issues or problems with this method. So I think at some point we can start incorporating it within our database migration helper methods. And just to reiterate, it's usually a problem when you execute several different database calls within with lock retries. That's usually where problems can happen, because simply with lock retries executes the whole thing in one transaction. And normally when there is a complex process, you don't want to do that.
You think we can make it fail if the transactions are disabled, like to raise an exception or something?
It's tricky. I mean, Rubocop will probably help us preventing this, right? But yeah, I think that's our best shot. You could still do stupid things, right? To just add the column and do an inline data migration within the block. But I'm hoping that we would notice that on the review when we review the code.
Okay. Does anyone else have any comment on this one?
One more comment is that we could put the with lock retries in the database review guidelines in a short form to link to people. You know, it has a big section, but it's becoming. I mean, I think it should be used more than it suggests.
Yeah, it's hard. It's easy to miss. I mean, it was announced on the weekly a while ago, and I'm pretty sure many people have missed it. I will try to add a link and maybe just a short paragraph in the review guidelines, just to.
I mean, it has no side effects, so using it isn't risky at all. So I mean, whenever we can use it, right? That's how I understand.
Yeah, but there are some rules, right, to follow. So if you use standard Rails helpers, then I would say it's safe.
It sounds like it's better to say when not to use it. If it's okay to use it like pretty much every time, maybe it's rather better to say, well, don't use it in this and this and this, and in these cases for sure, but then there is discretion.
Yeah, good idea.
I added some examples in the docs, but I think we should extend it a bit and give more explanation that when it's not okay to use it.
Also, some standard examples raised, like to add a column. Maybe we can also modify them to have with lock retries, so that people do not immediately choose the review rejectable version as default.
Yeah, that's good point. And I think we will work on this quite a bit when we are starting, integrating the helper method in our other helper methods, because some methods that we have, we simply cannot really execute it for large tables, simply because it's just unlikely that it will work. And using lock retries I'm pretty sure it would help running those migrations on larger tables. But yeah, this will be several MRs probably to update the docs and tweak the helpers further.
Okay. I think adding the Rubocop might not be that complicated. So yeah, that might be the boring solution here, and adding and modifying the docs. Okay. So Alper, you have the next point.
Yeah, we had a case with remove concurrent index. I think some other people also had it. It doesn't accept index name as the second parameter. It either should be name, index name, or I think remove concurrent index by name. Then I discovered three more, actually one of MRs was mine. Then I discovered two more MRs which did like that. So down method would not remove the index actually. It's not very risky, but then I filed a new MR, and then Adam made the comment that maybe we could really test up and down and do not miss such things. Actually, I have migration output, you know, but the output, you know, you don't pay a lot of attention that it's removed there. It's visible that it's not removed, but you don't really pay attention. So what do you think about that? Like,
yeah, very interesting. I haven't noticed this. I think the long-term solution would be to add this to our CI, so to make sure that every migration is, well, not reversible because they are reversible, but to ensure that the schema, when it's reversible, is the same as the previous migration. And perhaps we could also add another cop about not using remove concurrent index in the down method and to use remove concurrent index by name.
yeah, and why do we have by name method and also, I think, named version of the remove concurrent index, if I'm not mistaken? Also, why doesn't it raise an error, like if you have an index name? That's also curious.
So I think why we didn't notice this issue is when you look at the implementation of add concurrent index, first it checks if the index exists. So even if you roll back your database and the index is not removed, you migrate it again, nothing happens. So that's probably one of the reasons why this could just, you know, go unnoticed, because I think we do have some kind of tests to revert the database schema. Myra, can you confirm it?
I'm not sure.
familiar.
I am not sure if we have it. Do you mean on the CI?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think we only have like for running up, but not for running down.
Okay.
But perhaps I'm wrong, or at least I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I think I've seen this problem too. I actually had a review today that had this problem. I think maybe one thing we could do, like in the remove concurrent index, passing that, you know, expecting the table name and the column name to be passed. And it's just checking if the index exists, but I think if we could look and see if that column exists maybe, then we would be able to identify that that column name is not valid. We could raise an error there. That would be a pretty minor fix and then throw an exception. So I can look at doing something like that.
Yeah, I think that is a good point. Does that answer your question, Alper?
Yeah, that's, I mean, there are a lot of good ideas how to go.
So can I move on then? With the question I'm having is, so we're adding a Jira kind of importer, and we want to be able to track which issues did not get imported by the importer for any reason. So we're catching those exceptions, and we can track which issues did not import. So now I have two options. Like, these are basically temporary data, because like for now, my understanding is we only want to be able to report those back to the user to let them know, well, these are the issues that we could not import. Go and look up, see what's going on, maybe re-import these specific issues by hand or stuff like that. So like my first thought is I can just put them all into an array field and give them back to the user and be done with them. Would that be, there is no restriction on how many can fail, obviously. So I'm not sure how big that field can come. And is that a valid option, or should we rather use some sort of a table and then do some sort of cleanup there? I don't like, this is where I'm debating what approach to take.
Would you just store the Jira issue ID? Am I correct?
So it's a issue key because that's what users view. So on Jira is they have an integer ID which is unique, and then they have this issue key which is unique within an instance, but it can be the same theoretically if you are importing from two different Jira instances, like on-premise and some online instance, or two different on-premise instances and so on. So potentially, because what they're doing, they are taking the project, sort of a short form of a project name, and then append the IID that, for instance, we have. And this way they generate a unique issue key.
And do we limit how many issues you can import?
Like we don't have a restriction on the importer per se, how many we import, like as many as you have, we're just running them through Scikit jobs and import everything.
So just, Alper, you wanted to say something?
Have you considered the table called import failures? Maybe you know that.
Do we have a table called import failures? Or do you mean to create one?
No, there is one table called import tables that was, you remember there was a huge import for one of the customers on importing the whole projects. And that table was for importing a whole repository, like everything, not only, Jira. And now I'm checking the schema. It seems to be usable for by you, I think.
Project. Yeah,
import failures.
I didn't know about that, to be honest.
Let me check how many data we have on the production.
What constraint we have here? Anyway, I can check it offline. That's a good starting point, at least. But then, would you have a preference in general to keep it in a field, or rather have a table to store the?
Yeah, just a suggestion. So if you define an array column, that means we can potentially put there tons of items, and these items will be stored on the same row. So when you load up a record from the database, everything that's in this array needs to be loaded into memory so you can render your list. And in a really unfortunate scenario, when you want to import several thousand issues and each of them are failing for I don't know what reason, loading that list and rendering that list could be a problem. So you will start thinking about pagination, but you still have to load that array in memory. So I don't know if there is a way to limit how many items to fetch from a Postgres array. But I think the safest option here is to create a separate table and have pagination on it when you list the issues.
Yeah, sounds good. And then one other point that I didn't add it to the, and I think we're close to time, so I'll try to be quick. That is in regards to the mentions migration. So we had a couple of them that did time out on production, and although I did run them on Database Lab, use the indexes and so on, they still failed on to run on production and timed out. Is there what would be the best way to try and prevent those things? Or are those just like unlucky scenarios where nothing that can be done? It's just what the data looked like at the time that it was run on production, so it just avoided to use indexes and so on?
So I ran into a similar issue. A migration has failed on production somewhere in the middle when it was trying to iterate over some items, and after the improvement we proposed, what I did is generated all the queries that would potentially be executed on GitLab.com. For this, you need to have actually the count, so you can generate the the ranges and execute each queries on Database Lab or on your console, database console if you have, and check the query timings. That's the only way, because basically you are testing all the possible queries that you have. But this is really a pain in the, yeah, it's a painful process.
Yeah, especially for nodes table where you have like a few 100 million. It's not.
Yeah. So I'm not sure which part of your migration failed, the pagination part where you actually looping through the items and trigger the migration, or?
Yeah, the pagination itself, the first time where it tries to load the batches. And yeah, it was also, I wanted it to run faster because of this 300 million or something like that nodes. I didn't want to iterate like in batches of 10,000, then you'd run it for a week or more. So I tried to get like 1,000 of the rows that are like matching the criteria that I need. And obviously at some point the distribution of the data is so wide that it wanted to query more, like it had to fetch a lot more rows and scan a lot more rows, so it timed out, which didn't, like, I did test it, but didn't, like with a lot of, from the beginning, from the end and so on, like different parts, and didn't fail on Database Lab. But yeah, I'm just trying to figure out, try not to run into that again. Just it's not a pleasant experience.
Yeah. I'm not sure this would work for the mentions table because it's huge. But I think Andreas mentioned before that we can just iterate over ID ranges without actually running any filtering on the table, or some filters that are really fast, and then just generate the ranges and pass it to the background migration. And that would produce a tons of basically empty ranges where you don't have anything to migrate, but it would be much safer to schedule.
Right, but then how much can we lower the background jobs interval, right? I think the minimum is 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's still like, even if it's empty, it still needs 2 minutes to run one iteration, which is a lot.
Yeah, and that's why I said that for the mentions it might not be an option.
Yeah. Okay.
I think iterating over the table might be a better option than using the range by interval and passing a relationship there, because I think Andreas also explained the other day that it was failing because of the ranges not being the same when they were scheduled and when they were fetched because of the size interval. So yes, it might take some time, but I don't think there is some kind of hurriness to finish it. So perhaps we can just ship it in one release and just wait for that release to be over and to also rely on the migration to be completed.
So do we have like I guess not, but just to be sure, is it okay if a migration like this runs for like 2 weeks or 3 weeks, or is there a time frame that we need to like schedule it? Should we rather, like, for instance, run it for first 20 million nodes and then run another migration for the next 20 million nodes and so on? So have multiple migrations limited by ID in this way, sort of, so that we don't have one long migration that will schedule these jobs? I don't know.
We don't have an upper limit about the timing. We have had migrations that have lasted like weeks, and for larger tables. So I don't think that is like a stopper. And regarding splitting by ID, well, I'm not sure. I think that can be tricky because if one migration fails again, then the other one might be scheduled. I think we might just give it a shot of iterating over the whole table.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks.
Okay, so we are on time. Thank you everyone for joining, and I hope you have a good rest of the day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.